Les Amants. In a moment, Jeanne decides to leave her husband, her child, her playboy lover, and her wealthy middle-class life for Bernard, a young man whom she met just hours ago. With a look, they were in love. Everything forgotten but each other, they wandered through an idyllic landscape during the night with the music of Brahms in their spirit. For the first time, Jeanne knows love, and a new woman is awakened in her. She lets go all resistance because one cannot resist happiness. In the light of the early morning, as they drive away from her old life, although unsure of herself and afraid for the future, she nonetheless has no regrets. She has made friends with the great risk, and who knows, her happiness might last. The last train. He rose out of a mediocre existence. Love called forth the greatness he had in himself. She called that love forth, his nameless beloved. He gave his life to attest to their love when all was lost for her, except the hope that despite their short time together and their long separation, he had loved her then and loved her still. They meet in 1940 on a train carrying civilians escaping the German forces which are heading into France. His pregnant wife and their child have been seated somewhere in the front of the train, and he has found a place in the freight car. While he goes to check on his family's whereabouts, she comes running across the field and finds an empty place next to his. When, at the last moment, he is pulled back in as the train is gathering speed, their eyes meet, and the relationship that will change their lives begins. He is an unsophisticated man, a radio repairman from a very small French town. And she, from a far more worldly background, is a German Jew who, therefore, cannot afford to fall into the hands of either the French authorities or of the Germans. And as the train rolls on, his neighbor silently calls his attention to her face in profile. For the first time, he grasps the full beauty of it. During the night, instinctively knowing she can trust him, she sleeps with her head leaning on his shoulder. And he, acutely aware of this unexpected gift, stays awake for a long time. This is probably the closest he has ever been to such beauty. The next day, contrary to what his rather timid appearance would suggest, he takes the lead in solving the impasse between the French army and the railway workers, allowing the train to continue its journey. He was impelled to act simply because it was something that had to be done. That night, the train is bombed, and the passengers jump out to take refuge in the adjoining countryside. Following behind her, Julian shields her body with his own as the bombs drop around them. In the train, Anna continues the intimacy which has been growing between them. Gently, she leads him to her body and to her heart. She knows she may do this because she has already asked him if he loves his wife, and he has given her the answer he considers self-evidently affirmative. We're married. She smiles, and then, perhaps understanding her amusement, he smiles too. The train continues its journey toward the port city of La Rochelle. One morning at dawn, the freight car is separated from the rest of the train. As their relationship evolves, Julien's desire to find his family diminishes somewhat as his desire to continue the journey with Anna grows stronger. He has already learned that Anna's lover and her parents have disappeared into German concentration camps. After one bombing episode, he finds her sobbing with her head dropped low in her hands. "Will we go on?" she asks. "Of course," Julien answers. "Don't cry." When she asks him what will happen when they get off the train, he thinks, but finding no answer, shrugs his shoulders. The night before the train is due to arrive, she says in German, "I love you," knowing he doesn't understand. And when he thinks she is asleep, he tells Anna he loves her. "Ich liebe dich and je t'aime." Now, fully aware of their feelings, they declare them, but almost as if only for their own heart's ease. The train finally arrives at its destination, and as they are leaving the platform, a loudspeaker announces that the passengers must present identification papers. Without papers, the French will send Anna back to a camp for aliens, from which she has already escaped once, and eventually she will be found by the Germans and shipped to a concentration camp. Taking hold of her arm and of their fate, Julien leads her through the gate. In the processing room, when Anna is asked for her papers, she can only look helplessly at him. Taking command of the situation, Julien says she is his wife and that they have lost her papers. She is given a temporary document and is able to leave the station with Julien, who has once again done what had to be done. Julien learns that his wife is in a hospital a few hours bus ride away, and although he tells Anna the Germans are already there, she wants to go with him because she doesn't want to start being alone so soon. The next morning, she accompanies him to the hospital, where he learns his wife has had a baby boy. Telling her to wait, he runs up the hospital stairs. And the moment Julien is out of sight, Anna rises and leaves the hospital and boards a bus back to La Rochelle. She stayed with him until he had found his wife, and not one moment longer. She stayed till that moment, even though she risked being taken by the Germans. She has made the decision for them. And Julien returns to his former life, never mentioning Anna to his wife, who doesn't know how close she came to losing him. One night in 1944, they come for him. He is brought to Gestapo headquarters and questioned. Using her false identity, Anna had fled to England, but later she returned and joined the Resistance before she was captured. Now, because she had used his wife's name, he is suspected of being her accomplice. When shown her passport photo, he denies any knowledge of her. Apparently almost freed, he is told at the last moment to be seated again in order to look at the prisoner herself, who is actually waiting in the next room. Anna enters and takes the seat beside Julien. He looks over and sees the same profile which he gazed at the first night on the train. She turns her head, and they look once more into each other's eyes. Since they have not shown any signs of recognition, Julien is told he is free to leave. He reaches the door, and as Anna sees him leaving, one of her hands grips the other. Suddenly he stops, turns round and looks at her. He cannot deny his beloved. Slowly he moves toward her, while the triumphant interrogator outlines his completely false understanding of their complicity. Julien takes Anna's face in his hands and sends her a look of infinite tenderness. They share the briefest moment of joy in their reunion before the realization that he too is doomed flows through her. He smiles to reassure her. He has eased her way to death by offering his life so that she could keep their love. Nor would he have been able to live with himself afterward if he had not gone to her. He has protected her from the very beginning. Even with this last gesture, he protects her from a forlorn death. Julien has again given Anna an identity, a woman beloved, to save her in the only way now open to him, by showing her his continuing love. The piano. She and her daughter and her piano bring him music and poetry and dance and art. That vision of heaven emboldens him to court her. Slower than the growth of empires he wooed her, and for that tempo and devotion and the knowledge that the door to her heart was through the piano, he awakened Eros and won her love. My beautiful laundrette. Johnny and Oma have known each other since they were 5 years old. From the beginning, Oma adored Johnny, who became a friend of the family. Oma's father, who had been a famous journalist in Pakistan and who was now living above the railroad tracks in Thatcher's England, helped Johnny when he was at school. When they meet again after a period of separation, Johnny, ex-skinhead, now a punk, and Oma just starting to make his way, running his uncle's laundrette. Both are eager to resume their old friendship. Their renewed familiarity brings them always closer. Once, while saying goodnight, Johnny tenderly takes Oma's face in his hands and kisses him full on the mouth. Oma allows each step closer to the complete embrace. Shortly before the opening bell of Powder's The Beautiful Laundrette, which they have created together, they begin to make love in the back room. Johnny, holding Oma from behind, slowly pulls his jacket down over his shoulders, kissing and caressing him all the while. And as he is gradually being undressed, his body opening to Johnny, Oma reveals to his lover the sorrow in his heart, but without ever desiring to free himself from Johnny's embrace. Johnny has betrayed Oma's family, who had been good to him. They had seen Johnny marching with other bullies under their window, with bricks and bottles and Union Jacks, and shouting, "Immigrants out!" Oma's father was filled with a rage that couldn't go anywhere. He was afraid on the street for Oma's sake, and he took it out on his wife, and finally for her it was unendurable, and she jumped to her death onto the railroad tracks as the train was coming in. Oma's father gave up then. After such failure, such emptiness. And Johnny, who until now has been reluctant to acknowledge his old fascist past, knows his own guilt and his responsibility in Oma's sorrow, and he is silent. His heart has been reached, and he feels shame and remorse. "There's nothing I can do to make it up to you. There's only things I can do to show I'm with you now." Breathless. Jesse, a petty thief and unintentional cop killer, just managing to keep one step ahead of the law, and even that distance rapidly diminishing, but a romantic on the grand scale, inspired by his comic book hero from another galaxy who has the power cosmic, but for whom the power supreme is love. Jesse, somewhat of a stranger to reality, but a being with a good heart. And Monica, whom he loves, a French exchange student at a Los Angeles university, fetching and talented, making headway with her professional ambitions, which do not include an outlaw like Jesse. But she is seduced by his spontaneous, extravagant ways and the thrilling adventure which her life becomes as she follows him. In the moments when Jesse briefly allows himself to see the desperation of his situation, he takes heart by managing to banish reality from his mind and escaping into the sound or beat of rock and roll. Jesse is always sympathetic because we know he does not desire to hurt anyone. When Monica asks him which he would prefer between grief and nothing, he chooses nothing, because with me, baby, it's all or nothing. Most of the time, Jesse is running. His only peaceful moments are with the music or with Monica, until finally all avenues of escape are closed. It's remarkable, though, how time and again, even when the police are the closest, when the chips are really down, he will still take time to win over once again the ever-vacillating Monica, to convince her that she loves him before trying to save himself. Even when she betrays him to the police, his love for her finds a way to let his momentary anger go, to insist again upon his belief in her love for him. But circumstances continue to conspire against Jesse. As the money which will make possible his escape to Mexico with Monica is arriving, so do the sirens of the police a few seconds later. And because of the uselessness of giving money at this moment to Jesse, his friend gives him a gun instead, which Jesse instantly rejects, but which his friend tosses into the air as he himself swiftly drives away. And all of a sudden, there's only Jesse on center stage. The police have taken their positions behind him with guns aimed at their target, and at a short distance away, Monica stands facing him. There's nowhere to go. On this very spot, Jesse has to determine the future of his life. As always, he plays it by ear. The time to embrace nothing has come. And Jesse, the lover of Monica and of music, of the Silver Surfer and of Jerry Lee Lewis, calls on the rhythm which is a part of him. And facing Monica, he sings the words of Breathless, the song of his life since we know him. And the police are completely dumbfounded, and Monica is running toward him with arms outstretched and crying, "I love you, Jesse." And Jesse makes his grandiose farewell, giving new meaning to the words, "You leave me breathless," and whirls around toward the police, bending his body as if reaching for the gun, the invitation for them to open fire, and allowing Jesse to have it all his way when the only choice was grief or nothing. Lolita. Transgressive, sympathetic, dear Humbert Humbert, the slave of a nymphet, yet a slave whose profound but unreciprocated love and passion for the nymphet transcend her age and remain undiminished even by Lolita's transformation several years later into another man's pregnant housewife. Humbert, in his own way, keeps forever the promise he made Lolita long ago. Cross my heart and hope to die, never to leave her. Brokeback Mountain. Only outside of civilization, on Brokeback Mountain, can they express their feelings for each other. There where love first arose. Ines Del Mar and Jack Twist are overwhelmed by the strength of this irresistible, unexpected attraction. After the first night of unrestrained passion, a tenderness between them starts to grow. But society does not allow a relationship such as theirs. And at the end of their season of herding, they return to their conventional lives, far apart from one another. When, after 4 years, they meet again, their passion at once springs into flame. Ines resists Jack's urging that they live together because he fears his passion for Jack is uncontrollable and he knows that discovery means death. Jack reluctantly accepts this decision, and for almost 2 decades they continue to love one another twice a year on Brokeback Mountain, but their separation causes great suffering to both. Unable to indefinitely bear being apart, Jack once or twice risks discovery with other men, and one day he is murdered on the road. Neither could live, denying his nature. Jack died violently for it, and Ines, in another way, dies slowly. When, after his death, Ines visits Jack's parents, he is invited by his mother to go up alone into Jack's boyhood room. There he finds the blood-stained shirt he thought he had lost up on Brokeback Mountain at the time of their first meeting. Jack had hung it under one of his own jackets. This is what Jack's mother, who appears to have offered unconditional love to her son, and now extending her compassion to Ines, had wanted him to find. Life goes almost completely out for Ines after Jack is killed. All he has left of their love are his jacket and his own blood-stained shirt, now hanging over it in a silent, unending embrace, and a picture of Brokeback Mountain beside a tiny window in the trailer looking out at the world from his desolation. The Sheltering Sky. Thank heavens I misunderstood Paul Bowles' novel, The Sheltering Sky, when as a very young woman I read it. It was one of the books which inspired me to take the big risk in order to realize the great fulfillment. But a new reading more than half a century later shows that, contrary to my early impression, Bowles' vision of his characters is a bleak one. Relationship seems impossible, and death or madness overtake the voyagers while they are still far from completion. Although my new version is captivating for different reasons, I still feel grateful to the book. Perhaps even now I have misunderstood it. And this felt closeness extends itself naturally to the film, of which one of the most beautiful scenes is depicted here. Here she makes love with her Berber lover who keeps her locked in a remote room of the house disguised as a young man. But while he is away, her secret is discovered. These are pages from the journal she used to keep before she penetrated so far into the desert. Now she has trimmed them to make her room more beautiful for her lover's visits. Her husband, with whom she made the journey from New York to Morocco, has died of typhus. Leaving everything behind, she has entrusted herself to a caravan traveling over the Sahara. With nothing and no one to protect her after the jealous wives have driven her out, she loses hold of her mind. Morocco. In love for the first time, Tom Brown asks Amy Jolie to go away with him, and she agrees, believing she has at last found her true mate. But, misled by appearances, Tom decides Amy would be happier with her wealthy suitor and pretends he has changed his mind, giving up his own happiness to ensure the well-being of his beloved. For love of her legionnaire, Amy Jolie decides spontaneously, if not now, when, to leave her life of luxury with a man who is unconditionally in love with her and follows her beloved Tom Brown, discarding even her high-heeled shoes as she struggles to catch up with the regiment, and they march off into the desert. Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. Pandora and the Flying Dutchman meet and recognize in each other their eternal loves. But because in a previous existence he has murdered his wife, whom he unjustly suspected of infidelity, and then cursing his maker, he is doomed to wander the seas until he finds a woman who loves him enough to die for him. Only then will he be allowed to die himself and to attain his salvation. Pandora is ready to give up her life for him, but the Flying Dutchman realizes he loves her too much to accept this sacrifice. So he pretends not to love her, thereby abandoning all hopes for his own salvation. When Pandora learns the magnitude of the Flying Dutchman's sacrifice, she joyously returns to him. They go down together, joined already in a timeless embrace. The Eye of the Needle. Their destinies intertwined, events bringing them always closer to each other. A German spy discovered at his radio transmitter by his English landlady during World War II plunges his knife into her breast. At the same time, elsewhere in England, a young newlywed English flyer driving with his bride causes a crash which leaves him an invalid. Henry Faber, now on the run, eludes Scotland Yard and manages to uncover vital information which can win the war for Germany if he is able to bring it personally to the Führer in Berlin. And David, who cannot come to terms with his disability, takes Lucy and their small son to live on a remote island in Scotland where, except for Tom, the shepherd, they are completely alone. Henry arranges for a submarine to pick him up off the very island where Lucy and David are living. During a storm, the ship Henry is sailing crashes. Washed ashore, he manages to crawl up to Lucy and David's door before collapsing. Reviving Henry and taking care of him revitalizes Lucy, who has been isolated for several years without even the touch of her husband. Her sensitivity, openness, and beauty make her irresistible to Henry, Hitler's most feared underground agent in England, for whom the war has meant isolation. So they come together, Lucy and Henry, the false Englishman, and her country's enemy. She opens her heart and her arms to the appreciative, understanding stranger, and he gives her all the tenderness he has in him. Saving his life, she gives him the chance to experience love, and through love grow from the disillusioned loner and deadly agent to a being capable of unconditional love. Eventually, the unfolding of events causes the war to come down to them. And in a war between the two of them, he chooses not to destroy her, although it may mean his own death and the failure of his mission. Having killed her husband and Tom because they had recognized him as a spy, he takes leave of his love, who by now knows he is her husband's killer and her country's enemy, saying, "I did what I had to do. It cannot be undone. I'm sorry. Goodbye." He leaves unarmed because under no circumstances would he ever harm her. And she has to kill him to prevent his reaching the submarine, which would take him and his information to Berlin and make Hitler triumphant in the war. Killing him causes her enormous pain. He sees it in her face as they look at each other while she is forced to continue firing until he falls. As he is dying, still facing each other, she drops to her knees, saying with her expression, "I did what I had to do. It cannot be undone. I'm sorry. Goodbye." Damage. The amazing authenticity of their lovemaking is rare in film. When Anna, in the delirium of unprecedented pleasure, turns upon Stephen her smile of smiles, and he answers with a smile which radiates intimacy and complicity, they set new standards for how much aesthetic and emotional satisfaction, as well as high pleasure, a lover of sexuality might experience. From the first moment they look at each other, they acknowledge to one another and to themselves a desire for the complete embrace. She already knows he is the father of her lover and therefore taboo. And a moment later, when she introduces herself as a close friend of his son, he knows it too. Yet the open recognition of an attraction which is too powerful to be hidden cannot go unfulfilled. In this, one of the most forbidden situations, he can nonetheless release for the first time his own capacity for unrestrained passion, the depths of which he has never known before. But the price of discovery is high indeed. Stephen and Anna know that discovery of their relationship would destroy Stephen's marriage to Ingrid and the happiness of his own son, who would hate him forever, and yet they cannot keep away from each other because the magnitude of their desire resides on the level of the uncontrollable urge. Inexorably, their precarious Eden turns into the scene of tragedy. Through chance, Martin opens the door to the sight of his bride-to-be, swooning in the passionate embrace of his father, whose rhythmic thrusts are bringing her to orgasm. For some seconds, all three are transfixed. Now it is horror which is in their eyes. In that moment, Stephen and Anna must have realized the enormity of their transgression and selfishness. As Stephen desperately murmurs Martin's name, his son recoils and, walking backward, falls over the stairway railing, plunging to his death. Yet, even after the scandal, the loss of his wife, his family, his profession, despite having to live with the death of his son on his conscience, Stephen still cannot give up Anna, who has walked away and who will never come back. The smile of smiles turned into the moment when time stood still and everything vital in each of their lives was lost.
I've tried to win you with my ardor. I have tried to win you with my tears. I have tried to win you with my inventions. And I have tried to win you with my wit. I have tried to win you with my beauty. I have tried to win you with my songs. I have tried to win you with my daring. And I have tried to win you with my eyes. You said no to my ardor. You said no to my tears. You said no to my inventions. You said no to my wit. You said no to my beauty. You said no to my songs. You said no to my daring. You said no to my eyes. You said no to my ardor. Yes to my ardor. You'll say yes to my tears. You said no to my inventions. Say yes to my inventions. You said no to my wit. You'll say you said yes no to my beauty. You said no to my songs. Say yes you said no to my daring. You said no to my eyes. To my song. You'll say yes to my ardor. You'll say yes to my tears. You'll say yes to my inventions. You'll say yes to my wit. You'll say yes to my beauty. You'll say yes to my songs. You'll say yes to my daring. You'll say yes to my eyes. I have tried to win you with my tears. I have tried to win you with my beauty. And I have tried to win you with my tears. I have tried to win you with my I have tried to win you with my songs. I have tried to win you with my wit. And I have tried to win you with my beauty. You said no to my ardor. You said no to my tears. To win you with my songs. No to my inventions. You said no I have tried to win you with my daring. To my beauty. You said no to my songs. You said no to my daring. You said no to my ardor. You said no to my tears. You said no to my inventions. You said no to my wit. You said yes to my tears. You said no to my yes to my inventions. No to my daring. You say yes to no to my eyes. You say yes to my beauty. But you're going you say yes to my song. Yes to my ardor. You say yes to my daring. Yes to my tears. You say yes and then to my eyes. Say yes to my inventions. And you'll say yes to my wit. And yes to my beauty. And yes to my song. I have tried to win you with my tears. I have tried to win you with my inventions. And I have tried to win you with my wit. I have tried to win win you with my beauty. I have tried to win you with my songs. I have tried to win you with my daring. And I have tried to win you with my eyes. You said no to my ardor. You said no to my tears. You said no to my inventions. You said no to my wit. You said no to my beauty. You said no to my songs. You said no to my daring. You said no to my eyes.
I have tried to win you with my songs. I have tried to win you with my daring.
Yes to my
And
ardor.
I have tried to
say
win
yes
you with
to
my
my
eyes.
You say yes to
You
my inventions.
said no
You say yes to my
to my
wit.
ardor.
You
You
say
said no
yes to
to
my
my tears.
beauty.
You
You
said
say
no
yes
to
to
my
my
inventions.
songs.
You said
You
no
say
to my
yes to
will.
my
You
daring.
said
You
no to my
say
beauty.
yes
You said
to
no to my songs. You said no to my daring. You said no to my eyes. You'll say yes to my ardor. You'll say yes to my tears.
to win you with my ardor.
You'll say yes.
I have tried to win you with my tears.
To my wit.
I have tried
Say yes
to win you
to
with
my
my
beauty.
invention.
You'll say yes
And I have
to my
tried
song.
to win you
You'll
with
say
my
yes to my daring. You'll say yes to my eyes.
But oh, if we call the whole thing off, then we must part. And oh, if we ever part, then that might break my heart. But oh, if we call the whole thing off, then we must part. And oh, if we ever part, then that might break my heart. Carrying on a conversation, looking in your eyes.
Jump and burn and make
Your eyes, they seem to jump and burn and make me see how much to you I want to be. They jump and burn and make me see how much to you I want to be.
They jump
But
and burn.
oh, if we call the whole thing off, then we must part. And oh, if we ever part, then that might break my heart. But oh, if we call the whole thing off, then we must part. And oh, if we ever part, then that might break my heart.
We must part. And oh, if we ever part, then that might break my heart.